we're here till 11:30, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Morning. We do this in English, right? Yeah, just making sure. I actually used to give this a few years back. I think I gave I don't remember if it was a whole year or just like a few months, but I was involved in Beit Midrash book here for quite a while.
Yeah, the first year we started.
First year you started? Okay.
First year, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. Did you miss me? I don't know.
I did, no, you gave a share on, you used the computer on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Because of,
Okay. Anyway, so it's nice to be back, and I'm actually going to be here for Shabbos as well. So if you don't getting enough of me, you'll be able to see me on Shabbat too. Short introduction to the topic, and don't worry about all these sources. We're not going to go through all of them, but we will do a significant amount. As some of you may know, in the last 5 to 6 years, I've been very much involved in the field of halacha and mental health. I wrote a book called Nafshi B'She'elati, and I'll be talking a lot about that actually on the Shabbos, that I'll be here. And I also created an organization called Maglei Nefesh, which, if you know, like Machon Pu'ah, which deals with fertility and halacha, same kind of idea, meaning to deal with mental health and halacha, train rabbis in the field, answer shilas that come up. And when I was writing that book, and I wrote it together with my friend Dr. Shmuel Harris, who has a clinic here in Jerusalem, Machon Dvir, psychiatrist, when I was writing the book, so the first thing that I needed to do, beyond understanding the mental health aspects, was to also understand the halachic frameworks that I could use in order to paskin on these issues. Because there are definitely halachic criteria that have been put together for physical health. But with regards to mental health, there's almost nothing that's really been put in place over the years for various reasons, which I could give a separate shir on in and of itself. But bottom line is that when you look at the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim Shin Kavchet 328, you see only physical health and only criteria that pertain to physical health. You do not see anything that pertains to mental health almost at all. And, questions are complicated. People will say all kinds of things. I'm suffering from depression or anxiety or an eating disorder, PTSD, etc., etc. And I'm finding it difficult on Shabbos. But, can I use cannabis on Shabbos in order to deal with the flashbacks? Or can I use my phone? Can I listen to music or watch something in order to help with the, damaging thoughts that I have, etc., etc.? How do we put that into a category? How do we understand what that is, what we would define it as? Is this person a chole sheyesh bo sakana, a chole she'en bo sakana? Right? We need to define the terms before we can paskin whether he can do derabanans or deoraisas or whatever it is that he can or cannot do. Right? So all those frameworks, all those halachic frameworks needed to be fleshed out and developed.
Are you including pikuach nefesh?
Sure, absolutely.
We pray for Rufus Nefesh and Rufus Aguf.
That's right. I people have often mentioned that to me, and 100%. I never know in the original, right, that they mean refuah nefesh the way we mean it, because the word nefesh is multifaceted in terms of its meanings. But fair enough. Anyway, this led to a series of appendices that I put at the end of my book, Nafshi B'She'elati, which deal with the lomdus, so to speak, behind the psak, meaning with all the learning, with all the frameworks that I'm mentioning. And today we're going to learn about one of those frameworks. Okay, so we're going to talk about, as you see here, the headline, the koteret is Ma'amad Choli HaNefesh Kecholi Sheyesh Bo Sakana. In other words, being in a state of very poor mental health, would that be considered a chole sheyesh bo sakana, meaning like pikuach nefesh, basically life-threatening? Now I have to be very, very clear about what I mean. Not today, mental health is a spectrum, all right? So I don't mean any mental health condition. Because we've, for good or for better or for worse, we've pathologized more and more of the human condition. Meaning we look at more and more situations as things that we can medicate, as things that we can get a doctor's prescription from, or a diagnosis for, right? You could say that's good. Once again, I apologize, it's my son, but anyway. We look at more and more things as problems that we go to the doctor for, and as a result of that, right? If the spectrum of issues, right, has grown, then that means that more and more times, right, we look at something as like a diagnosis or a definition of an illness or a disorder. Now, once again, you could say that that's positive because we're able to medicate or able to get subsidies, for care in that situation. But on the other hand, that means that more and more people. Now, let me just put this on silent. That means that more and more people will not be considered, so to speak, normal. Okay, and that means that more and more people will be walking around with a diagnosis. So, for example, right, if someone said, "Oh, I'm suffering from depression," I assume that a lot of people here will say, "I don't even know what that means." Yeah, because depression is such a spectrum now. It doesn't mean only one thing. It means a whole array of presentations, right? So I would actually need to hear what the person's going through to understand how severe the depression is and what's actually happening in that person's life.
Is he actually depressed?
Okay, sure, 100%, right?
We used to have the word sad.
Yeah.
Sad is no longer used.
No longer used.
It's
Fair enough.
an affective disorder.
Fair enough. But you understand what I'm saying, yeah? So at the end of the day, right, that's why people say, so many kids are on Ritalin, or ADHD is so, is everywhere, right? So what happens? We dilute the definition, meaning if we start diagnosing a significant swath of the population with a certain disorder, the disorder loses its meaning. It becomes simply the human condition, right? If 80% of the class has ADHD, then I guess we just all are walking around with ADHD, yeah, on some level, right? That's the problem. The problem is with the dilution of the diagnosis. But all that was to say that this year, okay, I'm talking about someone who is on the more extreme side of the spectrum. I'm not talking about any person with a mental health condition. I'm only talking about the more extreme. If you will, the halachic term would be a shote. So someone who is pater min mitzvah, someone who is exempt from keeping mitzvahs. If I asked you about the people that you know that are dealing with mental health issues, are they exempt from mitzvahs? I assume that most of them you'd say no. But if you ask someone in Gemara times, they would say yes. Because those were almost synonymous. Meaning mental health condition was synonymous with shote, almost always. Meaning synonymous with the person on the extreme side of the presentations who is exempt from mitzvahs. And that's what I'm talking about. Okay? Everyone with me so far? We're clear? Okay, all that was to kind of focus us. So, here's the question that we're basically asking, all right? What can I do on Shabbos for a person who is either a shote or on his way to becoming a shote? You want it in modern terms, someone with, let's say, suffering a psychotic break, if you will. Someone with schizophrenia who is not taking his medication. Or someone with bipolar having a manic episode, right? And let's assume that they will not hurt themselves or others. I don't want to go there, right? Suicidal ideation, suicidal behavior. Let's put those aside, because those, obviously, you would say those are pikuach nefesh. I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about just the state of being in that situation where you are a shote. Can I do a melacha on Shabbos or a derabanan to help you move from a status of shote to a status of pikeach? From someone who is exempt from mitzvahs to someone who is now chayav in mitzvahs. Is that clear? Is the shaila clear? Okay, that's this topic. That's what this is about. So let's learn. Okay, let's begin to look at some of these sources and understand what the answer would be to such a question.
The word pikeach is a chiyuv.
Pikeach means that he's mentally competent.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it implies competence. Yes. Yes.
Is taking medication for mental health is on Shabbat an issue?
I mean, like any other medication, so we have,
Is it like any other medication?
it's like any other medication, yes. And I would suggest taking it, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, the Gemara in Yoma, Pei Hey, source 1, is the famous Gemara that discusses the question of how we know that you can be Mechal Shabbos for Pikuach Nefesh. And the Gemara there brings, I think, no less than 7 answers, actually. 7 different sources to try and explain how we would know that, how we would know that that's allowed. It's obvious to us today, of course, for Pikuach Nefesh you can desecrate the Shabbos, but it wasn't obvious to the Tanaim, and they deal with it, they discuss it at length. 2 of the reasonings that are given in the Gemara stand out. One of them I think you know very well. The other one I'm sure will ring a bell. So let's read in source 1. וכבראיה רבי ישמעאל ורבי עקיבא ורבי אלעזר בן עזריה מהלכין בדרך ולוי הסדר ורבי ישמעאל בנו של רבי אלעזר בן עזריה מלכין אחריהם. So all these rabbis were walking along. נשאלה שאלה זו בפניהם. This question was asked. מניין לפיקוח נפש שדוחה את השבת? How do we know that פיקוח נפש is דוחה Shabbos? Right? That's the question. And once again, I'm giving you 2 out of the many answers that were given. רבי שמעון בן מנסיה אומר, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. אמרה תורה, חלל עליו שבת אחת, כדי שישמור שבתות הרבה. Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh learns, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. Am Yisrael must keep the Shabbos, but keeping the Shabbos, right? Sometimes we look at it long term. אמרה תורה, חלל עליו שבת אחת. You may desecrate one Shabbos, כדי שישמור שבתות הרבה, so that he may keep many Shabboses. Okay, this is a sort of a ends justify the means sort of idea. Okay, we look not at the one Shabbos, but at the many Shabboses. Right, we want this person to have the ability to keep many Shabboses, so we will desecrate this Shabbos to keep the many. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Ihavai hatam have'amina didi adifa mididhu. If I was there, I would have told them, because I told you there's like 6 other answers, I would have told them, my answer is better than yours. What's his answer that's so good? Shmuel is an Amora. He cannot disagree with Tanaim, but if he would have been there, he would have told them, I have a better one than all of yours. V'chai bahem veloshi amud bahem. I think this is a famous drasha, and you're very familiar with it. Right? V'chai bahem veloshi amud bahem. You live in the keeping of the mitzvahs. You don't die in the keeping of the mitzvahs. Okay? So far so good? Amar Rava, lekulu itleu pircha, bar midishmuel deleit lei pircha. For everyone there is a kasha, except for Shmuel, there's no kasha on Shmuel. Why? The Gemara goes into every single one of the answers and explains why each one of them is difficult, and why Shmuel's answer covers everything. And the Gemara continues and says, Ve'ashkechan vadai safek minalan, ve'kulu ashkechan vadai safek minalan. In fact, all of the answers have an inherent issue that Shmuel doesn't. Because all of them only cover questions of vadai, when you're sure there is pikuach nefesh. But Shmuel also covers cases of safek, right? As it says, "Ude Shmuel vadai leit leipircha." In Shmuel, there's no such question. Meaning, once again, you can look at all the other drashas later on, but with all of them, you would only know cases where it's a definite case of pikuach nefesh, but you would not know safek. You would not know a case where it's doubtful whether there is pikuach nefesh or not, which today halachically is also covered. Safek pikuach nefesh is like pikuach nefesh. But with Shmuel, v'chai behem, you put life first. Even if it's in a doubt, you put life first. So Shmuel answers also that safek. So what we come out with, right, from everything that I just read, was that there are 2 drushes here that I'm focusing on, and that the post can focus on. One is v'chai behem v'lo shi'amut behem. That one is the best of drushes. And the other one is Chalel alav Shabbat achat kedei sheishmor Shabbatot harbeh. Desecrate one Shabbos to keep many Shabboses. Okay. From here on out, with your permission, I will refer to these 2 as Chalel alav and V'chai bahem. All right, just for to streamline the conversation. Which one of these drushes is paskin? So V'chai bahem is clearly paskin. Everybody paskins, or most people paskin V'chai bahem. It seems clear. The Rambam does so in source 2. I'm not going to read that right now. Okay, but he clearly paskins it, and most people know v'chai b'him. But is chalel alav also paskin? You might say, what does it matter? Because on the face of it, Chalel alav implies something totally different and might, if applied, limit the application of v'chai b'hem. See, the relationship between these two drashas is hotly debated in the poskim. And let me give you an example so you'll see. The Beit Meir, Rameir Posner, lived in the 19th century, talks about saving the life of a child who is, I believe, the child of a Karaite in that situation, but it doesn't matter. Someone who's not religious. Okay? And look what he says in source 3. Kivan de kol ikar heter chilul, since the heter to be bechal Shabbos, hu kedei sheyeshamer Shabbatot harbe, is in order to keep many Shabboses. V'tinok shenishba, but this baby, who is a child of a non-religious family, who bechizkat shelo yishmor Shabbat, the chazaka here is that he will not keep Shabbos. Kivan shenishba bekatnuto v'sover shegoyu, he even thinks he's a non-Jew.
That's not the same as a not religious Jew.
I mean, that was the case over there.
Okay, but then it makes it less applicable
What do you mean?
to most of our situations today, certainly in Israel.
Why? Here he's talking about a child.
But v'sover shegoyu.
The child
The
thinks.
guy doesn't even understand that he's Jewish.
Right.
It's different from a non-religious Jew in Israel who knows he's Jewish.
Okay, but still not keeping.
But still not keeping. But the
Right.
question is how.
And the chazaka is that he won't keep. I think it would be applicable, but okay, fine. We could disagree. You know. ואף ששמואל למד ההיתר מן הפסוק וחי בהם, מכל מקום מסתמה לא פליג לדינה על התנא שלמד מן ושמרו. Meaning, even though Shmuel learns it from וחי בהם, he does not disagree with the Tana, with Reb Shimon ben Nassi, who says, חלל עליו. ומודה שעל מישהו בחזקת ודאי שלא ישמור, שאין לחלל עליו. The rule is, if the chazaka is that he definitely will not be keeping Shabbos, we're not mechal Shabbos for him. V'chen mumeret meuberet, same thing for a woman who is pregnant, who is mumeret, basically doesn't keep. She's out of the fold, so to speak. We wouldn't save her life. We wouldn't help her to give birth on Shabbos. It wouldn't break Shabbos for her. So you can see that's a pretty extreme example of the difference between v'chai b'hem and chalel alav. V'chai b'hem would imply saving the life no matter what. Chalel alav implies that you look at the religious position of the person and what they're going to keep. Right? This is the position of the Beit Meir. He was arguing with Rabbi Akiva Eger. Rabbi Akiva Eger in source 4, look what he says as a response to the Beit Meir. Ulibi mehases bazeh harbe. I'm not sure that you're right. De'arei harbe te'amim ne'emru b'gemara. Many reasons were given in the Gemara, not just that one. Ulechad tanei alfinan mikal v'chomer. Imken hu hadin de'al kol gufo mechalalim Shabbat. Just for the body, forget the soul and what he'll do, what he'll keep Shabbos, he won't keep Shabbos. For the body, you're mechal Shabbos. V'gam hi guf akashya. Kivan de'darshinan v'chai b'hem v'lo sheyam. Since the drasha is v'chai b'hem, menalan lomar, how do we know to say, dehu davka heichi de'ishmor Shabbatot albeh, that it's only if you keep. Why are you using v'chalel alav to limit v'chai b'hem? How do you know that that's the interaction between the drashas, that one limits the other? Ve'ide amrina, and if you'll tell me, de'hatorah hekpida davka al chayut adam she'ishmor mitzvot, the Torah is only makped on the life of a person that will keep mitzvahs, imken gam be'ikar tzivui lehachayot, neima de nefesh kaze mutar lehorgo. Would you also say that you could kill such an individual actively? Then mitzuvin lehachayot like misha yekayem mitzvot. We're only commanded to keep alive those who will keep mitzvahs. Ela vadai, rather it's more clear to say, de amrinan de haTorah chasa al nefesh mizera Israel. Meaning that it's not about whether he'll keep mitzvahs or not, but rather the Torah simply cares about a Jewish life, whether they'll keep or they won't keep. The Torah cares about a Jewish life, and so he ends the last line there. V'hadavar be'inai kashe me'od lehachlit. It's very difficult for me to decide kedat kvodo, like what you say. Doesn't seem right what you say, etc. So he disagrees. But all this goes at the end of the day, right from a Lomdus perspective, it goes to the question of the interaction between the drashas. The Beit Meir understands that Chalel Alav is limiting V'chai B'hem. That V'chai B'hem was only said in a case of a person who will keep mitzvahs. But if the chazaka is that he will not, then the drasha does not apply. And so you wouldn't be able to be B'chal Shabbos in that situation. Rabbi Akiva Eger clearly disagrees and says that makes no sense to me. V'chai B'hem stands alone, stands on its own. Okay? And you can,
Are we prognosticators so we can know that somebody's never going to observe?
right. Some people ask me that always, right?
I
So he says chazaka. He
have
says
a personal
chazaka.
experience with this, so
Right. Right, I understand what you're saying. Right, he says, but chazaka is that he will not. I understand. You're saying, well, we never know. Look, either way, halacha was not like the Beit Meir. You can see in source 6 on the page. Source 6, the Bir Halacha, who you know as the Mishnah Berurah, in his Bir Halacha, clearly says, Aval Ledina, source 6, Lo talui klal b'mitzvot. It has nothing to do with whether you're going to keep mitzvahs or not keep mitzvahs, says the Mishnah Berurah. The enatam, the reason is not the dachinan mitzvah achad b'shvil albe mitzvah, or doche one mitzvah for many. That's not the reason. Ela dachinan kol mitzvot b'shvil chaim shel Yisrael. We're doche all mitzvahs for a life, right? That's basically the rule, says the Bir Halacha. Now, unlike the Beit Meir, and just as Shmuel learns it, skip 2 lines in the source. Ulefi zeh, middle of a line 4. Ulefi zeh barur, it seems clear. De afilu katan merutzatz. So I have a katan here. He's not even chayav in mitzvahs, the katan, right? He's under 13, right, or under 12, right? And he's merutzatz, meaning, let's say he's been crushed by an avalanche or whatever it is, and he's dying. Nami mechalalin. We're also going to be mechal Shabbos to rescue him. Afal pi de lo yishmor Shabbatot, even though he'll probably die and he'll never keep Shabbos because he's a katan. Gam lo itvadeh. He also won't be able to say vidui. V'lo yavol lichlal gadol, and he won't become, chayav in mitzvahs. So what? Afal pichen mechalelin. Nevertheless, we're mechal Shabbos for the life of a Jew. And he continues to say, v'kmochen hu hadin cheresh v'shoteh. Afal gav deinan b'nei mitzvot. This is very relevant, of course, So if you have people in your community who are not chayav in mitzvahs because of their status, right? As a cheresh today would not be necessarily considered a shote, but a shote, right? Someone who is completely not mentally competent. Would you be mechal Shabbos to save such a person or to help such a person on Shabbos? Of course you would. Mikol makom mechalalin aleim. Dehadelo mekayme mitzvah umishum onsayu. Right? They're it's honest. It's not up to them. They're not mekayme mitzvahs. But the point is that you would be mechal Shabbos for such individuals, right? And you can also see it in the Yalkut Yosef, source 7. Mutar lechalel et hashabbat gam avur pikuach nefesh shel cheresh o shoteh. That's the halacha, right? So we know that the halacha basically falls that way. All this was just to give you the framework that I wanted to give you to understand that the relationship between the 2 drashas is hotly debated. Between the poskim has many interesting. This was only one nafkamina. This was only one ramification. There are many ramifications for such a discussion. Sometimes the other way. So, for example, you could say that a fetus is not v'chay bahem because he's not yet alive, but does have chalil alav, right? To save a fetus on Shabbos could be because of chalil alav, not v'chay bahem. V'chay bahem is not yet fully alive, so that wouldn't be a reason to be mechal Shabbos for a fetus. But if he's born, he'll be mekayim mitzvahs. So chalil alav Shabbat achat kedei sheishmor Shabbatot albeh. Sometimes one drasha is the drasha that helps us to, and sometimes the other one, right?
You don't have a chazaka. You don't know what the fetus is going
Well, the chazaka here would be that he's being born to a family that's religious or whatever. But you're right, sure. But my point is that sometimes one drasha is the mekel drasha, and sometimes the other drasha is the mekel drasha, depending on the situation, right? Either one, right, might be like one could be more machmir in one situation, and one could be more machmir in another situation, depending on how you look at it. Sometimes you'll be evaluating it according to the future, and sometimes according to the present, right? So you'll always want to know which one, so to speak, wins out, or how they interplay. So if you say, my only point is that if you'll say, v'chay bahem covers everything, yes and no, right? You still need chalil alav for some cases. If you want to be, so to speak, lenient to the nth degree on pikuach nefesh, right? You'll still need chalil alav in some of the cases. So then that becomes the question: can we use both of the drashas to be mekel, or are we saying, is Rabbi Akiva Eiger saying, is the Bir Halacha saying, chalil alav doesn't matter? It's just v'chay bahem. If that's true, that it's just v'chay bahem, that will also have ramifications. Okay, so we're going to look at that in a moment. Someone want to ask something before I go on? Okay, we're good? Okay. Fine. Still, right, we have a bit of a question here, right? Because we saw in the Gemara together that chalel alav and v'chay bahem are different in one very important point. Suffix. V'chai b'hem covers all cases of safek as well. But chalel alav does not cover all cases of safek. So cases that are doubtful, if we're trying to cover with chalel alav certain cases, there will only be in a case of vadai, where it's obvious, clear that there is a pikuach nefesh, and not a case of safek, where we're not sure if there is a pikuach nefesh. So on the face of it, using chalel alav is tricky in that sense, because it will limit us in terms of the things that we're able to say and to do, and that seems to be what the Netziv in source 10, the Netziv of Volozhin says. You see what he says in source 10. V'sham hochachti de besafek sakanat ha'ubar en mechadalin et hashabat. Right? If you have a fetus, which I told you is not covered by v'chai b'hem on the face of it, only covered by v'chalel alav. But then if it's safek whether the fetus is in trouble. So once again, I think today everyone will say safek, you're mechal Shabbos. Yeah. But the Netziv is saying, well, I mean, are we? If the reason we're mechal Shabbos for a fetus is chalel alav, then in safek sakanat ha'ubar, if there's a doubt, it wouldn't be covered, because the Gemara says it's not covered by chalel alav, right? As it says over there, uchikushiat Rava, as Rava is makshe, beyom al ze'adrash v'kulu nami yeshkachan b'dei safek min alan, right? You know, how do we know about safek? So on the face of it, it's not covered. But many poskim say otherwise. And the reason they say otherwise is as a result of the Shulchan Aruch Harav source 11. Source 11, Shulchan Aruch Harav is Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the first Rebbe of Chabad. And in Shulchan Aruch Harav, he has a very interesting piece, which is then used to tackle this concept. The case there is a girl who was taken from her home, kidnapped by, I think it was Christians over there, in order to convert her and take her with them. And the question was whether you can go out on Shabbos to save her, right? So you're not saving her from physical extermination, but from spiritual extermination. And that's the question over there. So this deals with chalel alav, really, right? Because, what are you saving? You're saving her soul. You're saving her ability to keep many Shabboses, on some level, right? That's what we're talking about over here. So look what he says.
What about putting yourself in danger? Is that a factor here?
The what, sorry?
What about putting yourself in danger?
Putting yourself in danger, yeah. Well, those you're right, that is a factor. We're not going to go into it right now, but it's like a discussion within a discussion, is what I would say. So you have to factor in the personal risk, but that's always, right? Like we always, we're in the middle of a war, right? You factor, you send soldiers out to war, you're putting them at risk. Why is their blood less red than, okay, but that's always a factor. When you go out to save someone, the person who's doing the saving is putting themselves in danger, and you factor that in.
We discussed this with other shiurim.
Okay.
That idea.
Okay. Anyway, look what the Shulchan Aruch Harav says, source 11. Someone learns that his daughter was taken by non-Jews in order to convert her. He must immediately go to save her. Even if he has to do a malacha. And even if it's a safek whether he'll succeed to save her, he has to go on the side that it might work out. Even if it's a safek, this is of course relevant to us. Explains the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Umikol makom, hacha behatzalat avera, tzarich iyunim mechalalin b'safek. On the face of it, it's not so clear that we could be mechalal in a safek case. Did we not learn in Yoma? Davka mi v'chai b'hem muchach de mechalolin misfeika. It's only v'chai b'hem that covers safek. Aval mishum she'amra Torah chalel alav lo yadinan b'sfeika ayen sham. It's not so clear that we can know that with a safek and chalel alav. And here it's chalel alav that's guiding us. Mi ubaran, however, in the Ran Perek Yom Kippurim mevu'al beheded de mechalolin afilu be'ubar mehaitama. The Ran seems clear that you are mechal Shabbos on a fetus in such a situation. And here's the reasoning. Look what he says. Ve'efshar the levatar de galilan kra, meaning after the pasuk has already revealed to us v'chai bahem the mechalalin misafek gabei pikuach nefesh, im ken hu hadin b'shvil sheishmor shabbatot arbeh shu chashuv gam ken kepikuach nefesh v'tzarich iyun. In other words, once the pasuk told us v'chai bahem, and that's the main limud, it exerts its aura over the other libudim. So you did the other limud we don't know safek. Yeah, you don't know, but now I told you. I told you from V'chai Bahem. Meaning V'chai Bahem taught us that it also includes Safek, and it basically affects the other limudim in the Gemara that they will also now include suffix. It didn't say that the other limudim don't cover suffix. It just said you don't know whether they cover suffix or not. So this limud, v'chai bahem, proves that suffix is also part of it, and now it spreads its influence over the other drashas, and now they also will cover suffix. Or
I don't need the other drushes.
sorry.
I don't need the other drushes. Once I've got Chai Bayam and he covers Suffolk, I don't need the other drushes.
Well, you will need them, like I said, to cover cases of like a girl who's been taken, where it's not v'chai bahem, the physical body, it's the spiritual, right? So you will need chalel alav for some cases to cover those cases, but then you'll only know suffix, you won't know vadai. That's the problem. So we're claiming that the v'chai bahem will interact with the chalel alav and affect its context, meaning it will affect also how wide you'll use the heter.
So why does he say tzarich yud?
Because he's not sure. It's his chiddush. So he says tzarich yud. I think so. It's his chiddush. He's the first one to say it. So he says tzarich yud. Okay. I haven't seen this anywhere else. That's what I think, though. Okay. So the 18th century. So that's what he came up with. Yeah.
You could say v'li nireh.
Okay. He says ifshar. But before your question, okay? Just want to say one thing. As you'll see, though, the poskim pick up on this, and they totally, like, you look how the Eshel Avraham says it. Sof davar geder pikuach nefesh shedoche rachiv atrei richshei. It rides on two different sources. Ubemakom shelo yaspik ha'echad yashlimo hasheni. If one is not enough, the other one fills in the blanks, and you see the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Vosner, source 13. Nireh de shtei hayesodot emeten. They're both true. Hainu de darshinan shtei hadrashot lehakel. You take both Rashas and you push them to the bimekel. The kol tam b'fnei atzmo kedai lechalil alav Shabbat. Every single one of the reasons is enough, but you use them together. And Minchas Asher, Rosh Hashanah, also in source 14, says very similarly. Yeah.
Is it 100% clear that when they explain the Chai Behem Shlo Yamut Behem, it refers only to the physical problems and not to any other issues? Yesh Mavet Nafshi, yesh.
Okay. I mean, but for Shtut, that's how the poskim understand it. You're asking me whether we could understand it differently. We could, of course. I mean, you're right. I'm just saying. Barur zelo. Yeah, like, the drasha is quite clipped. Yeah, it's not relating. Right, it's not relating. On the face of it, it's not relating to mental health. It doesn't say that. So you would assume it would say that, but you could always say a lot of things. Shalom. Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, the Eshel Avraham, the Shevet HaLevi, Rabbi Asher Weiss in source 14, which I did not read with you, but that's, I think, okay. We are running out of time after all. All those basically say the same thing. So, if I summarize this portion of the shir, because this was the more, shall we say, in-depth, londish part of it, okay? What do we basically see? We see that the poskim are dealing with a plethora of drashas. Out of the 7, they pick 2, V'chai B'hem and Chalel Alav, which are the focus, usually, of the discussions. V'chai B'hem seems to imply to the physical body. Chalel Alav seems to imply to apply to the spiritual potential of the individual. Kedei she'ishmor Shabbatot harbeh. It seems like the context of each one might be different, but at the end of the day, the poskim bring them together and say that these two drashas do interact with each other in the sense that they help each one to be mekel in the right place. So they are darshaned both and leniently in order to save lives as much as possible in any situation. All right, and that's how we kind of like get to the situation that we are in today, which I think is what everyone assumes, right? Of course, even in a suffix, and even this, and even if they're not religious, which is what everyone assumes. But this is how we got here, right? Because the poskim, and it wasn't a clear road. Yeah, there were bumps on the way, and certainly different poskim disagreed and didn't always hold like that. But you can see that the consensus, certainly in modern times, is as such. So far, so good. Okay. All that was to set the groundwork, okay? So now we come to our cases. Now we come to the question that I have. So I said at the beginning, what happens if there is someone, right, who has a mental health situation, condition, disorder, whatever it is, on a very, I would say, extreme level, okay? And that person needs to be Michal Shabbos or do some other thing in order to get back to being Pikeach, okay? In order to be able to come back to himself and to be mentally competent again. Can we restore mental competence
Is that
on
Pikuach
Shabbos?
Nefesh?
Or anything? So, on the face of it, right, Chalel alav kedei she'ishmor is a form of Pikuach Nefesh, right? Meaning, if we are trying to get the person to lishmor Shabbatot harbeh, right, that's called Pikuach Nefesh from the Sugya. On the face of it, that's what we would say. But, don't take my word for it. Yeah? Let's see what the poskim have to say. So, look at source 16. There aren't many cases, I gotta tell you, when I looked into the whole topic, when I was writing the book and everything, there aren't a whole lot of cases in the Rishonim, and even in the Achronim, that discuss these sorts of situations. Mostly what the discussion of mental competence appears in the context of Even HaEzer and Choshen Mishpat, meaning Gittin, Kiddushin, transactions, business, right? Can a person do a certain thing? Can he do an action? Will it work? Will it be called? Will it be considered? Et cetera, et cetera. Questions of Orach Chaim Yoredea, less so, much less so. But we do have this gem in the Maharil, end of the Rishonim period, 14th, 15th century, who says the following: Al shehaya chasar dat v'nitrape miyom el yom. Very interesting, very interesting language. Chasar dat. Okay, this person seems like he doesn't have any competence. That's the simple understanding. V'nitrape miyom el yom. He's getting better every day. So he's in a process, and we don't want to interrupt the process. We have this today. We know this today, but it's interesting that they knew it too. שאלו ממערי סגל, איך ינהוג בשבוע של תשעה באב ובתשעה באב? What should he do on the week of Tisha B'Av, the שבוע שחל בו, and Tisha B'Av itself? והיה מורה לאכול בשר ולשתות יין כל השבוע, וגם לא להתענות בתשעה באב. Right, so the Maharil says, right, eat meat, drink wine, don't worry about the 9 days and all the halachas of the 9 days. You're good to go. And also, even the fast of Tisha B'Av, do not fast. Meaning the Maharil understands that this individual, right, who's chasar dat, on the face of it, a shote, and nitrape miyom el yom, he's getting better and better, we need to make sure that his trajectory remains positive, and so he allows the person to eat and to get better as time goes on. Okay?
Interesting that he includes the wine too. Meat we can understand,
Yeah.
not fasting. Wine,
I mean, the meaning of the wine is not for the fasting. I think it's for the 9 days. Meaning, I guess that part of his diet or whatever it was that they were feeding him included that in some way. Why? Don't ask me.
It's very important for mental health.
Well, it helps with the appetite.
Okay. But one of the seminal tshuvas on this was in the Chatam Sofer. So source 17, is a mamish like an amazing tshuva. The Chatam Sofer in the 19th century was presented with this case, and you'll see what it is. אחד מתושבי קהילתנו, ספרדי אשר זה שנתיים הלך לעולמו. הניח בן אחריו שהוא לעת הזאת בן 7 שנים. So there's a 7-year-old orphan in our community. והנער בכל מעשיו כמתעתע. So it's going to be hard to translate this word for word. Yeah, but bottom line is that this child is not, so to speak, with us completely. מדבר ואך כל דברים ובעצמו אינו יודע מה הוא מדבר. He speaks gibberish, he speaks nonsense. שומע בעת מדברים אליו, he hears people talking to him. ואינו יודע תכלית שום כוונה מיוחדת על בוריה ממה שדיברו עליו, but he understands nothing. אינו לא חירש ולא אילם. He's not a חירש, he's not an אילם, he's not mute or deaf. אף לא פיקח, but he's also not mentally competent on the face of it. כל מעשיו, רמיזותיו, קריצותיו, תנועותיו, all of his actions, מוכיחין, מעידין ומגידין אשר הוא שותה. They seem to imply that he is a שותה. ודעתו קלישתא מאוד, his mind seems very weak. ואחרי אשר אבי הנער הלזה, הניח עיזבון גדול וסך עצום, ואין יורש אחר זולת השותה הזה. That he is the only inheritor of his father's estate, and his father left him a huge estate. הנה קרובי הנער, the relatives, אספו הרופאים המומחים מנוסים ומוחזקים שבעיר הזאת לדעת מה יהיה משפט הנער. So the relatives of this orphan came together, brought the best doctors together, and asked what to do with this orphan. All the money is there. We can do whatever we need to do, but what do we do? וחידת מה לעשות, למצוא מזור ותרופה לתחלואי גופו ונפשו. What's a good way to help this kid? והרופאים כולם פה אחד. All the doctors said. כי יש בו מעט דעת, ודעתו קלישתי. Has a bit of דעת, not much. ואין רפואה אחרת למכתו. The only place that we can help him is in Vienna. אם לא בעיר ויין, או בעיר ווצין, סמוך לפסט, אשר שמה הוקם בית חינוך, מורים מחנכים מלמדים לאלה דעת ומזימה. So, I don't know if it was the first of its kind, but basically it was a school for kids who, who were mentally deficient, right? So they said, sorry?
Was it that where Freud was from?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, they said we can. This was before Freud, but yes, but they said we can send him there. There is a school there. There is a place, right, where we can send this child, and he can learn how to become, more capable. ואם יבוא שמה, בוודאי בלי שום ספק יעלה מעלה אחר מעלה בדעת. ואף כי לא יהיה חריף כשערי בני אדם, על כל פנים יגיע למעלה להיות בעל אנושי, ניסה וליתנו לכלכל דבריו במשפט יטרוף טרף לו. If he goes there, he won't be like everybody else, but he'll be much better than he is now, and he'll be able to handle himself, and be able to even work, and maybe get a job, and etc., etc. וזהו מקום השאלה. What's the question? So I think you all know where this is going. כי אחרי אשר יינתן שמה, אף כי אי אפשר לשלוח לו להכין לו די מחייתו בכשרות. If we go there, he'll eat treif, because we can't help him with a kosher food. אף לא יניחו להוביל לו שמה דבר ממקום אחר. They also won't let anything like that happen. והוא צריך להיות בחברה ואגודות כל הנמצאים שם. He has to be in the programs that they have there. ואף במאכלן ומשכן, and he has to eat their food, he has to drink their drink. אם רשאים למוסרו שמה, כיוון שבוודאי יאכל נבלה וכל טרפה או לא, can they put them in this program, even though he'll eat treif. By the way, fascinatingly enough, it's been 150 years more, almost 200 years since this tshuva was written. Same problems today. Same problems. Yeah, I get questions like that all the time. If someone has anorexia or some other eating disorder, and they want to send them to some, program in, South Dakota, some, godforsaken place, they're in the middle of nowhere. There's no Chabad, there's no anything, right? The person will not keep Shabbos. You probably won't be able to supply kosher food. It's complicated, right? So then, we want to send them to this program. It's the only program, it's the best program for this person, v'chulei. Can we send them, yes or no? Right? I still get questions like that. The situation is not so. Here in Israel, obviously everything is kosher, or most programs certainly are accommodate. But I also get questions like that. I got a question, or similar. I got a question from a parent, just a few weeks ago, who said that they let the kids out on Friday, but then they pick them up on Shabbos to bring them back to the framework, to the program, and they pick them up before Shabbos goes out. So can she get on the bus and they take her back to the place, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so these sorts of questions, right? Sorry?
What bus? There's no public bus.
No, it's a hasa'ah. It's a hasa'ah that the place, they hire a company and they bring them back. And there's whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole question. There's importance to it. They have to get back at that time for a certain reason. I'm not going to go into all the details. Yeah, but the point is, these sorts of questions actually persist. Today, maybe even more than back then. Some solutions are maybe easier than others today. But still, definitely the idea of having a unique or specialized program for individuals with specific challenges, that reality persists. And many times, and if you've been in this situation yourselves or your family members, then you know that not all programs are good for everyone. And that you send someone to say, it's like to try and fail a lot of times. Like you try, that one's terrible. That's not good. That's not good. Oh, we found the one. But that we have to send, it costs this amount of money, that amount of money. We have to be only there, and they won't let anyone bring food in from the outside, and all kinds of things. Sure. That's exactly what the Khatam Sofer is describing over here. And what can I say? The reality hasn't changed so much. Tov, what does the Khatam Sofer say? Now, it's always interesting to see the first tshuva of its kind, because really there was almost nothing before this. And what does the Khatam Sofer say? He relates to all the sugyas that we saw. Okay, he relates to all that. And I'm giving you obviously the short version here. Demuvan midvarav. it's clear from the question. She'im yigdal kach b'shtuto lo ati lechlal mitzvot leolam. If he continues to grow without any sort of education, and we don't send him to this place, he will be a shote. Okay? He will not be able to keep mitzvahs. Ki shote kazeh patur mikol hamitzvot. Ve'al yedei zeh she'anu machnisim oto lebet hachinuch hanal, if we put him in that school, nevi'ehu lichlal dat, will make him mentally competent, v'itchayev v'ishmor mitzvot Hashem v'torotav, and he'll be able to keep mitzvahs and Torah. V'haya nireh lichora b'fashtut le'atil. So therefore, simply, it seems that we should be matir, allow to put him in such a place. Now remember, there's no pikuach nefesh in the physical sense here. It's just about the mind. It's just about whether he'll be, so to speak, competent or not competent. That's the whole thing. And you see that he's looking at it as pikuach nefesh. Lehotzio mishatyuto v'lachniso ledat yadut. To take him out of his shota status and bring him into mitzvah status. Mutav sheyichalel Torah zman ma kedei sheishmo mitzvot harbe. So he's paraphrasing the term in the Gemara that specifically relates to Shabbos, right? And he's using it in a different context, which is also relevant, important to us, right? Because you could say, oh, it was only Shabbos, only Shabbos. He's using it for kashrus, right? So he's saying it's better to be Mechal Torah for a while in order to keep many mitzvahs. You want to say something?
No, I think at the moment he's completely potter for any mitzvahs. So he's a complete shogun.
Yep.
No problem whatsoever.
Right.
You're bringing him to a chiyuv, and then he will be over all those isurim.
Maybe you should have written the tshuva, because that's what he's about to say. Okay. But then he goes back and he says, but wait. Maybe we shouldn't feed him isurim treif so that he becomes chayav. Harachmana patre. Torah's already pattered him. He's a shote. So why are we doing this? Nevertheless, he says, L'tzorach mitzvah shari. But in order to bring him to a mitzvah, it is mutter. Umikol sheken hacha laviol l'chayei ad lekayem kol haTorah. Yes. If you're bringing him l'chayei ad, meaning you're switching a life that is basically valueless from a Torah perspective, meaning you can't do anything, you can't be mekayim any mitzvahs, and you're bringing him l'chayei ad, al kenireli b'fashtut lehatir. Yes, he does agree that it's mutter. So your consideration, I understand it. He takes it into account. He disagrees with your conclusion, but that's okay. You know. Anyway, the rest of the tshuva is complex because he goes a bit back and forth in terms of the age. He says, well, right now he's 7. What happens when he reaches 13? You know, etc. Should we then, you know, what happens if slowly but surely he's getting better? So then at what point do we take him out? There is a bit of a complication, right? At what point does he become no longer a shote? And then you would say that the heter doesn't apply, you know, v'chulei v'chulei. So there's some complication there. And also at the end, he has a line. You see, if you want to, we can see it together. Look 2 lines before the end. After he says that everything is mutter, he says it's aser. When we call makom, heidu kadmonenu zal, shalidei ma'achalot asurot b'na'arut. When you eat treif when you're young, metamtem halev, then it messes with your nefesh on some level. V'molid lo tevara, gives you a bad teva, characteristics, whatever. So maybe I would say, mutab sheyeh shoteh kol yama, maybe it's better for him to be a shoteh. Since he ends the tshuva that way, so halachically he said it's fine, and then like machshavically he said it's not fine. So then everyone debates afterwards what he actually paskin. The consensus seems to be that he paskin that it's mutter. But nevertheless, there is some discussion because he ends the tshuva that way. We're not going to go into that. It's a bit, it's complicated. I guess you have to read his son writes a tshuva saying that his father was matir, you know, and this and that, whatever, the whole thing. Yeah.
So it's a side point, but so if you were in the Holocaust and you gave your child over to a nachri, etc., the idea is that hopefully that will survive and then hopefully she'll go to later.
Yeah.
So that's the same type of idea, is that you're giving a
right.
position.
I hear that. Yep. 100%. Right. Okay, we're almost out of time, so I do want to bring this to a place. Okay, so no, am I wrong? We have like 10 minutes, no?
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a long time for you. But anyway, so like I said, the Chatam Sofer blazed the trail with this tshuva. Okay, it was a new idea certainly, and like I said, had many discussions that resulted from it. But you can see the application of this, and I'm going to learn 3 more sources. Okay, so Eshel Avraham, source 18. This is the Talmud of Reb Shimon Shkop. source 18 says like this: Tavna ledina, nireh lichora barur, שמותר לחלל שבת וכדומה כדי לרפות את השוטה משטותו. You can be mechal Shabbos to make a person mentally competent. וכל שכן שאין לחוש למוסרו לבית חולים כזה, you can put him in such an institution, שיהיה מוכח לאכול מאכלות אסורות אם אין בית חולים כשר, if there's no kosher alternative. That's fine. ואם יש מקום חשש הוא רק בשוטה כזה שאין רפואה למכתו, ומוסרים אותו לבית חולי הרוח לרווחתם של הבריאים, if the only purpose of putting him in that institution is to help those in the community not to have to take care of him, that's not necessarily as clear. אז יש מקום להסתפק אם הוא בגדר ספייה בידיים. I'm not going to go into that right now. אבל במקום שהוא לרווחתו ולישועתו, גם לאחרים מותר לחלל שבת וכדומה. Once again, you can ממחל Shabbos, even deoraisas, right? Can be done in order to help this individual. ומה מאוד נפלאתי, how wondrous it was, I was surprised, כאשר נמצאת בתשובת חתם סופר, ודן לאיסורה. I saw that the חתם סופר kind of like ends his tshuva in an איסור. והוא דן מצד טעמים כל כך קלושים, I didn't understand the reasons, מצד שמאכלות אסורות מטמטמים ליבו של אדם, because they mess with the person's character, ומסיים שמוטב שיהיה שותה כל ימיו ולא יהיה רשע שעה אחת לפני המקום, better that he's a shota all his days rather than Rasha one moment before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What Resha? What do you mean he was a Rasha? What does that mean? Ki mitzvah rabai. It's actually a mitzvah for him to go there. Lehashiv nafsho letchiyah. So he says, clearly, this is a mitzvah. And like I said, he's reflecting the basic consensus amongst both. But if you want it from a more current source, I think I've never seen as clear a statement as the one in the Nishmat Avraham source 21. Okay, Nishmat Avraham, Professor Avraham Avraham, in the name of Rabbi Yashiv, right? Doesn't get more Haredi than that. Okay, so Rabbi Yashiv here, look what he says. I mean, it's a very clear psak. וכשדיברתי עם הגריש של ישיב שליטה, today's הצל, אמר לי שקטן פטור ממצוות, אך שוטה אינו פטור, אלא כאילו אינו קיים וגרוע מקטן. Meaning a short is even less than a katan because he's not going to grow up to become competent. וכפי שחייבים לחלל עליו את השבת, כך צריכים לטפל בו כדי שיתרפא ויהיה שפוי בדעתו ויתחייב במצוות. אף על פי שאין בו סכנה ממחלתו, even if there's no physical danger. But if he's a shota in and of itself, that is pikuach nefesh. And we have to mechal Shabbos to help him. Now look what he says. ואפילו אם הטיפול הוא על ידי שנאכיל לו בידיים מאכל או שתייה שאסור מן התורה, even if the way to help him is to feed him something treif, אסור מן התורה, ואפילו אם יתרפא ויתחייב במצוות רק לכמה ימים, and even if it's only temporary, meaning he only becomes lucid and competent for a few days, לפני שחוזר למצבו הקודם, before he reverts, חייבים לעשות זאת. So something I couldn't have a more clear statement than Rabbi Yashiv's statement over here, right? An individual who is a shote, right? You have to help him to become competent. And you do that even if it's an Isur Torah, and you do it even if it's temporary, but you do it. Because any moment that a person is chayav in mitzvahs and able to be mekayim mitzvahs and able to be oved Hashem is pikuach nefesh in the internal sense, and in a more, shall we say, mahuti, right, essential sense, for the individual. All right. Now that we've we've done the lomdis, we've done the tachlis, meaning the practical side of things in the poskim. Let me give you.
Why can't you wait till Sunday to do it?
Why can't you wait till Sunday to do what?
To try and get this show to become.
That's already in the Gemara.
What?
That's already in the Gemara. I don't know if you remember. There's a bright in the Gemara. It says, "Velo Shabbat zu bilvad elaf Shabbat acheret." And the Gemara says, "What does that mean?" The Gemara says, "If you have a refuah that takes 8 days to do, you do, and you're on Shabbos, you don't say, oh, wait till Sunday. Nope. If a person's in a pikuach nefesh situation, you start immediately. Since this is considered pikuach nefesh, you start immediately. Even if it's that's the Gemara Mephorish says that if you have a chance to be mechal 2 Shabbos or just 1 Shabbos, you mechal 2 Shabbos. If it's pikuach nefesh, you start immediately. You don't wait till Sunday."
Yeah, but it's not as if he's going to get better forever. It goes in and out, in and out, in and out.
It's considered pikuach nefesh right now, though. I understand what you're saying. Sorry?
He does say, he says that it's only temporary,
Even if it's temporary, he allows it.
even if it's only for one Shabbat, or it may not even be a Shabbat if you're only going to give it to one Shabbat.
It's considered pikuach nefesh. We treat it like pikuach nefesh. The person is not able to mekayim mitzvahs. That's considered pikuach nefesh. That's the chiddush here. And I'll show you in a second. Sorry, what?
We're Makal Shabbos for a terminal person to prolong his life.
Right. But here the life is the spiritual life of the person, right? But if you look at I wasn't going to read it, but look at verse 22 as well. Okay, this is Rav Shechter in the name of Reb Chaim of Brisk. Well, in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, in the name of his grandfather. Mimori v'Rabbi HaGaon, Rabbi Yosef Dov Alevi Soloveitchik Zal Shamati b'Shem Zkenu HaGaon Reb Chaim. Da'afilu k'she'en sham chashash shekazeh, meaning even if there's no physical danger, lehatzil mishigaon greida dino kesakanat nefashot. Meaning to save a person just from the situation where he is not mentally competent is pikuach nefesh. ואף דקיים עלן בשולחן ערוך דעל סכנת איבר אין מחללין את השבת מלאכות דאורייתא. Shani, it's different here. חשש שיגעון שדינו כסכנת כל הגוף. סכנת שיגעון is סכנת כל הגוף. Even if there's no physical danger, the actual status of the person as such is pikuach nefesh. So Reb Chaim Brisk also said. Anyway, the point is that there's many poskim who say it all goes back to Reb Shimon ben Manasseh. It all goes back to Chalel alav kadei sheishmor shabbatot harbeh. If we could bring back Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, would he say, this is what I meant? Who knows? Yeah. But the point is that, it all starts there and eventually culminates here. I'll just say one last thing on a very practical level. Dementia, right? So dementia is, it's a terrible thing, and it deteriorates over time, right? So at the first parts, at the first points of dementia, a person is still pikeach, and competent, or at least some of the times. Itim chalim, itim shoteh, what the halacha calls, meaning that there are periods where he's lucid and periods where he's not, right? What can we do to prolong, right, his lucid situation? Meaning, what can we do to try and prevent the deterioration? So according to this logic, right, if the person eventually ends up at a place where he's patur mina mitzvahs, prevention would also be even deoraitas you could do to prevent the person from deteriorating to that place. And indeed, in the source 23, which I'm not going to read, but in source 23, he says that. Rav Giora Brenner, and he asked Rav Neventzal, and he asked Rav Rabinovich, my Rebbe, Rav Rabinovich Zatzal, that it's considered pikuach nefesh to help people with Alzheimer's or dementia from deteriorating to that place where they're not chayav in mitzvahs anymore, and that you could do a lot of things in order to help them to avoid that situation. So prevention is also part of this story, and that I guess that's it. Have a good day.
Two things. First of all, I heard from somebody that if you can persuade, it's not necessarily directly related to mental health. If you can you read me Halal Shabbat?